Hey y'all, link analysis is a really important part of the due diligence process for SEO-focused acquisitions. You need to be able to compare the site that you're looking at to the competitive landscape and understand the risks and opportunities associated with the link profile that potentially inform the inputs that you have post-acquisition to grow the site. And also, if you even buy it in the first place, because there could be some risks that you uncover that potentially point to negative traffic or business implications post-acquisition. So in today's video, we're going to keep it pretty high level and just understand what are the different areas of the link profile that you need to dig into and really get your bearings. And honestly, it's a lot of stuff that you typically cover in really any link analysis. So I'm going to go over in a different video some of the link building tactics and some of the common ones that are out there, which you can pair this analysis with to really understand and get a complete picture of the site that you're looking at and their link profile. So with that being said, there's a few things that you should look out for when you're starting your link audit, beginning with overall competitive analysis. So this overall competitive analysis is really just about benchmarking the site that you're looking at versus the rest of the landscape in terms of total authority, link velocity, and a bunch of different areas that we'll dig into. Now, there's a lot of good tools that you can use to get all of this data very quickly. Ahrefs has a good batch analyzer, SEMrush has one as well, or whatever link analysis tool that you prefer. So there's a few metrics that I really like to look at here just to get my bearings. There's an example on the right-hand side of this chart with the insurance niche, but just using something like the batch analyzer in Ahrefs underneath more. If you're unfamiliar with this tool, it's right here. You can plug in up to 200 domains at a time and just get some high-level stats on these guys. So if you're doing a big competitive analysis around a lot of different sites, really easy way just to get a high-level comparison of the site that you're looking at and see how far ahead, behind, or just where in the pack they fall in terms of overall authority. Now, this isn't the end-all be-all of our link analysis. It's really just the starting point for us to dig into a bunch of different areas. So there's a few metrics that I really like to have in this competitive analysis, and one is just total LRDs, or linking root domains. How many unique sites are linking to these domains that you're looking at? I'll look at new LRDs per month. So this is all about link velocity and how fast they're building links. I think this is really important to focus on. I'll have a full video on this topic and really how to dig a lot deeper into link velocity. But let's say a site that you're looking at is getting 100 new linking root domains per month, but the market leader that you're trying to catch is generating 500 linking root domains per month. You need to increase your link velocity in order to realistically catch them in the landscape, right? And so that informs a lot of your potential link building strategies and just how you build authority on the potential site that you're acquiring in general, or even if you even want to acquire that site versus maybe another site in the landscape. So what I do to look at link velocity is essentially just taking a lot of the overview charts that show new LRDs over time, and you can essentially just take the snapshot of the last 6 or 12 months and get at link velocity pretty quickly. Obviously, DRDA is something that a lot of folks are looking at. It certainly can be easily gamed, and so I wouldn't use that as your end-all be-all metric for looking at overall authority, but certainly something that you can include in this competitive analysis. And then another quick hack that I like to do on this competitive analysis to really weed out a lot of the cruft in some of these link profiles is just to do a quick filter in terms of DR and estimated traffic for the referring domains that are pointing into each of the sites that I'm analyzing. So what I mean by that is essentially going into the referring domains report for any site that you're looking at. We'll just use an example here on innerbody.com, which is in the health and wellness space. You can see that they had a huge increase in total number of referring domains at the beginning of 2021. And spoiler alert, a lot of that stuff is just shit that you don't care about. It's a lot of like Blogspot subdomains, Web 2.0 type stuff that Google is probably not even indexing and likely ignoring. So it really shouldn't be factored into a lot of your link analysis and how strong this link profile is. It really doesn't stack up versus maybe other sites that have a legitimate amount of 52,000 linking root domains pointing to them. But a quick way to filter all this stuff out is if you go over to referring domains, you can just do a quick filter on DR and domain traffic. And so we're essentially just saying, hey, I want you to only show me sites that have at least a DR of 10. So you'll get rid of a lot of like the DR0 type stuff, which if you just do a filter for DR0 and see some of the examples, you'll see why that stuff has pretty much zero value. It's just a lot of scraped sites. So we'll hold off on showing results there for a second. And then domain traffic, we're going to say, I only want to look at referring domains pointing to inner body that have at least 1,000 visits a month. So for stuff that Google isn't indexing, it's not going to be getting organic traffic. So that's going to be a really easy way to filter out a lot of that crap in the link profile. So we're at 54,394 referring domains. And just by applying these two filters here, we go all the way down to 2,875 linking root domains. Huge drop off here. Obviously, a lot of crap in this link profile, stuff that Google's ignoring, not necessarily like toxic links per se. There could be some in here, but just really things that honestly aren't going to be providing a ton of value, and certainly things that you shouldn't really take into account in terms of having a ton of salt in your link analysis. So really easy filters there, and I'll do this comparison as well when I'm looking at sites across a niche to get a good competitive analysis for just how many kind of generally quality quote unquote links that they have in their link profile. Obviously you want to cut that by the different types of link building tactics, those types of sites that they have links on, and if they are potentially poor quality sites or really solid ones. And so obviously you want to dig further into seeing what types of links those are, but this can be an early filter just to give you a decent benchmark on overall number of linking root domains pointing to a site that you're looking at versus the competitive landscape. Before we get into some deeper areas of assessing link quality, I know my picture-in-picture is kind of blocking it right now, but in my opinion, obviously everybody's risk profile is very different, so make sure to get with your team on understanding what that is. But I think in most situations, I really don't want to compromise on link quality. This is the foundation for establishing a site's authority in any given category or niche, and I think is a lot harder to come back from in terms of potentially resurrecting a site that has a toxic link profile and has experienced a pretty significant traffic decline, or potentially is on a high right now and has a lot of risks in the link profile that you potentially need to mitigate. I think it's a lot tougher to come back from than having some content quality issues where we really just need to refresh content, make some experience updates. Obviously, every example and situation is different, and some people might not agree with me, but in the examples that I've seen and the sites that I've been able to get back from penalties or just really tough issues in the link profile or on-site content and other opportunity areas, the link profile is the most finicky to resurrect. So in my opinion, for potential acquisitions, really not compromising on link quality is one of my number one criteria for making sure something is a good buy versus a bad buy. So digging past overall competitive analysis and link velocity, I also think it's really important to look at link volatility, essentially how many new links or lost links are coming in or going out of the link profile over time. If they are potentially losing a lot of links on a monthly basis, where are those coming from? Do you care about them? Do they have business value or potential value to the overall authority of the domain? And is that going to be potentially a risk post-acquisition if there is a slowdown in new link acquisition and the link profile starts to deteriorate? So this is really just all about digging into some of those recent trends of new and lost links, understanding where those are coming from and if you really care about them. I'll also look at links by topic and site section. So this refers back to an analysis that we did looking at traffic by topic and essentially categorizing all of the URLs across a site that you're looking at and understanding what links are pointing into every single section of the site. Now you can use parent folder or URL structure if it has a decent URL structure to the site. Otherwise, you can pull out those category breadcrumbs like I showed you all to do and essentially pivot all of that linked data by those different groupings that you pulled out. So you can see here, just as an example in the insurance niche, I blurred out the URL folders just for the sake of the site that I'm analyzing and a little bit of their privacy, I guess. But you can see that the overall link profile is very skewed towards car insurance. And if this is a site that potentially wants to play across a lot of other different types of insurance and wants to grow a lot of their traffic in home insurance or pet insurance or life insurance, as an example, getting links that are related to those topics and pointing into those related pages is really important to make sure that they can execute on that growth strategy. So this is a really good analysis, I think, to do just to get a overall feel for where links are pointing throughout the site, and when paired with your analysis on where those links are coming from, can give you a really good overall picture of the link profile. I'll also look at link neighborhoods when I'm analyzing a link profile. So this is essentially sites that are sitting on these same IP addresses or groups of IP addresses that could potentially point to signals that they are managed by the same group of people, which could introduce some risk into the link profile. So you can pull some high-level metrics here just to start your analysis, but this is really all about digging into those common IP addresses and C blocks, or sometimes referred to as subnets, which are essentially the first three sections of an IP address, which is essentially the same hosting neighborhood. You can use the Ahrefs batch analyzer here, and you can see that they, I don't think it's actually in here. Oh, yep, there it is. Unique IP addresses, unique subnets, and so I'll look at essentially what's that ratio, and then what are some of the more common ones, and what are the referring domains that are underneath those common IP addresses and subnets, and is that potentially something that I need to be concerned about in the link profile that is a group of sites that's managed by the same person, and if those links potentially fall off on one site, do they fall off on all sites? Does that potentially point to an unnatural footprint that could introduce risk into the link profile? So this is a really easy analysis to do, just to understand the diversity of sites that are pointing into whatever site that you're analyzing. You also want to dig into anchor text. When you get it right, this is one of the most powerful signals for search engine algorithms, and in my opinion is one of the most classic signals of over-optimization too, if you're going way too ham on using a lot of exact match keywords as your anchor text. So dig into where these links are coming from. Is it a potentially like blatant comment spam or negative SEO attack, which is a little bit easier to come back from in my experience and in my opinion? Or are these potential links that you really need to be worried about that can introduce a lot of toxicity into the link profile? So generally, you want to see a nice diversity of anchor text within the profile. My rule of thumb is I try not to use the same keyword or phrase twice in anchor text if I can help it, if I have control over those links, but really, honestly, just a lot of diversity here is really what you're looking for. But you can dig into any of these anchors and see where those links are coming from in any tool like Ahrefs, SEMrush, or whatever else. A lot of them you can just pull down the referring domains reports here and see exactly example links for where those guys are coming from. Make sure you have some judgments there that you are pulling into your due diligence analysis. One last note on anchor text here. If you're doing a tuck-in acquisition or potentially redirecting a site that you're buying to another site that's on your platform, just one thing to note around branded anchor text, that can make redirects somewhat more difficult. Generally, Google's obviously looking for a lot of relevancy signals passing from that anchor text to whatever page or link that it's pointing to. So if that's potentially, Bob's blog is now pointing into another site that has nothing to do with Bob, those anchor text signals are all of a sudden very irrelevant on the site that it's pointing to. Those links could lose value. So there's a lot of different ways that you potentially get around some of those potential risks by pointing to like a press release page for the site that you acquired or something like that. But I can go into some of those strategies in a different video, but just generally look out for some branded anchor text if that's something that you need to consider around a tuck-in or redirect acquisition. Speaking of redirects, that's also something that you need to look into in the link profile. What sites did they have redirected to their main property, and are those actually relevant, and are they going to stand the test of time in terms of passing value to the site that you're looking to acquire? What percentage of the overall link profile are redirects? Generally, the higher the percentage of the overall link profile, generally the more risk that's associated with the asset, all else things being equal. Which domains do they have redirecting? I mentioned, are they relevant? Are those links that are pointing through those redirects actually good? Is the site built on an expired domain or something that they picked up, and really how relevant is that? So you can use link reports in Ahrefs, SEMrush, whatever else, to filter down to any links that are redirected into the site that you're looking at. I have an example here on the right-hand side of the website flip.com, which is run by a guy named Mushfiq, who has some great content in the M&A and website flipping category. So shout out Mushfiq. But you can see he deploys this strategy a ton, where he buys a lot of other blogs and sites that are in the website flipping and just making money online type of category. And I think he does a pretty good job of getting those redirected into a site and generating value from them. So just make sure to dig into some of the redirects that are potentially pointing into the site that you're analyzing and understand, are those relevant, what percentage of the backlink portfolio it makes up, and if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing for your investment thesis. Broken links are also important to dig into. Now, I really have kind of two main questions that I am asking when looking at broken links. One, is there potentially an opportunity to reclaim some of those? If they are recently broken, then that could be a potentially good opportunity to just redirect that to a relevant page if the article just moved and they didn't deploy a redirect correctly, or just redirecting it to the nearest category page or something like that to reclaim some link value, and just looking at the referring domains that are pointing into those, and if that's something that you would be interested in. There's a lot of potential cases for that. And I think on the other end of the spectrum too is answering the question, if there are broken links pointing into the site, are they purposefully dead-ended? And that's something that you just want to leave alone, and there really isn't an opportunity to reclaim a lot of that link equity, even if you would want it. So I want to give an example here of a site that I worked on a couple of years ago that was in a pretty bad traffic hole because of the link profile that was behind the site. So this was one where the previous team basically built like 1,000 guest post links, and the most obvious guest post links that you could think of. Things with like a common author footprint that are on sites that exclusively sell paid links. It was really just a bad situation, and something that introduced a lot of toxicity into the link profile. And no matter what we did in terms of disavowing those referring domains and trying to clean up as much as possible, it couldn't remove a lot of the negative effects and filters that were associated with the site. So my hypothesis going into dead-ending a lot of these pages, which is what we ultimately did, was the disavow file really didn't seem like enough to get these bad signals away from the link profile. So what I did was essentially just take the content from each one of those, we'll call them the most offending pages, in terms of a lot of really bad referring domains that were pointing into them, just moved that exact same content word for word to a new URL, and then just dead-ended the old URL. 410 status gone, cutting off any potential link signals that were pointing into those URLs, and just starting fresh on a new URL, exact same content. Those previous URLs, before we did this action, would only generally get to maybe like the 60 or 70 position for their target term, and really just be jumping all over the place. As soon as I move the content to another URL, 410 the old URLs, these new pages started indexing like bottom page 1, top of page 2, and consistently rank there for the terms that they're optimizing for. So a really interesting case study around the use of the disavow file, and really going to a little bit more extreme measures to clean up a link profile. But point being, when you're doing broken link analysis, asking the question, do I even want the link equity that's associated with these, or are they purposefully broken and something that I should just leave alone and potentially incorporate into my investment thesis around whether or not to buy the site if you're comfortable with a link profile that looks like that? I can cover some of these spam signals in a completely different video if y'all would like, but really just a couple of things to look out for here. One is just blatant spam, so things like forum profile links, comment links, things like that, like I mentioned earlier, I think are a little bit easier to clean up, but just something to watch out for. And then the second type of spam, or just generally bad links to look out for, is kind of what I call the murky middle. It's a lot of these sites that on the surface may look like a decent link, but when you just do like 2 minutes of digging on these sites, like go visit the homepage and click on the last 5 or 10 articles that they posted, if it's like all paid link placements, they don't have the greatest link profile, they're ranking on a lot of trash keywords. These are sites like this example on the right hand side here, that's a pretty popular example, that can introduce just a ton of toxicity into your link profile and just bomb your site if you have a ton of these, and it makes up a high percentage of your overall link profile. I've seen it way too many times. So looking for these types of signals, honestly staying away from potentially acquiring a lot of sites that have these types of signals in the link profile, generally good practice, but also asking, have they submitted a disavow file? Have they potentially dead-ended some URLs like I walked through before that contain some of these links? And if they're potentially built on purpose, or if they just happen to get links from a few of these, but they don't really make up a huge portion of their link profile. Generally, I think those are fine for most situations. But anyways, just looking at some spam signals, blatant kind of comment, forum profile spam, that type of stuff. And then also this kind of murky middle spam with a lot of generally paid link placements. And just wrapping up here, I'll have a completely separate video on link building tactics and getting into some examples of each one of these, but really you just want to take inventory of how they're building links across the entire site. What tactics are they using? Is it diversified? And are there potential tactics that you're really comfortable with or uncomfortable with? And what are the things that you should double down on? What are the things that you should stop doing immediately if you acquire the site? And then what are the things that you should just kind of do maintenance mode on because they're generally decent links? Keep the lights on generating a lot of those links, but really just understanding how does the link profile break down in terms of different tactics, and again, separating into those different buckets of double down, kill, or maintain for if you want to acquire the site. And then obviously if there's anything that is super awry in terms of what you're uncomfortable with in terms of link building tactics, that obviously could deter you from potentially buying the asset at all. So hopefully this high-level overview of link analysis has been helpful for y'all. Like I mentioned, I'll have some more videos going deeper into some of these different areas of link analysis, how I approach them, as well as looking at some different popular link building tactics and the risk profiles associated with each. So until then, I will see y'all in the next video.